Well, good afternoon. Today we're honored to have on our three-digit Hawaii State Bar Association ThinkTech Hawaii show, Fred Rohlfing. Welcome, Fred.
Hi.
Marilyn Carlsmith. Welcome, Marilyn. And Lincoln Ishida. Welcome, Lincoln. So the 3D lawyers are people who are admitted to practice law here in Hawaii in the early days, back in the 1950s and 1960s. And so we're very honored to have three distinguished guests with us today. So Fred, I'm going to start with you. Where did you graduate from law school and what year did you graduate?
My graduation was from George Washington University in Washington, D.C. in 1952. Washington. I was in Washington with the Navy and went to night school there for my second year of law school. And then I hung around and got my degree there before I left Washington.
So did you end up serving in the Korean War?
Yes.
I see. And where did you go?
Well, mostly my duty was in Washington, D.C. And I went to night school, as I said. And then I only had a few months to do in the service before I graduated. Graduated, went on a trip to Europe for 3 months, had a lot of fun, came back and went for the bar.
I see. And Marilyn, where did you go to law school and what year did you graduate?
I went to Stanford University in Palo Alto and I graduated in 1964.
See, so when you graduated in your class, were there many other women students?
There were three of us.
Three of you. So what was that difficult to be one of three?
It wasn't difficult. The first day we were sitting in property, the boy sitting in, I was sitting with a woman, we were roommates. The boy sitting in front of us was saying, "What are you guys doing here? You should be at home." And we just let it roll off our backs and we didn't have any problem. But the three women all made law review. I mean, we studied really hard because we knew we needed to do that to stay in. And the gentlemen, boys, they sort of accepted us and it wasn't hard thereafter, really. So, but it was fun. Good ratio. 1 to 50.
And what about you, Lincoln? Where did you go to law school?
Yeah,
Where did you graduate?
I'm a graduate of Northwestern University in Chicago. I went there for the 3 years for law. Graduated in '56, and immediately after graduation, headed home. I took a little spin around the country, but headed home. And since then, I've been here, practiced both in the public sector and the private sector since.
So did you ever work for any of the big firms, or?
I did not work for the big firm. Well, maybe I did work for a big firm because I worked for the government.
Okay, all right.
They were, at that time, they were big, you know.
Yeah.
The prosecutor's office and the city attorney's office, then the city attorney's office and the AG's office. And they, in size, ranked together with, you know, the case, the Carlsmith, you know, as far as numbers went. So yeah, I was with a big firm.
Okay. But in private practice, was it always your own firm?
Yes, I started out practice by myself with John Chinen, who has since passed on.
Yes, I see.
And I formed a partnership with Ben Kaito after he retired from politics. You know, Ben and I go back to our prosecutor days, and we always talked about getting together. And I always used to tell Ben, you know, I don't think I want to be a partner with a politician.
Yeah.
I want somebody to practice law.
Yeah.
And
So
he
we're going to
retired.
have to take a short break, I'm sorry, for a quick sponsorship.
We're here with Hunter Haviland because he is a member of our panel on February 26th. We're going to talk about Hawaii, the state of unfunded liabilities. Hi, Hunter.
Hi, Jay.
So what does it look like from your point of view, being on that panel?
Well, part of my work is with the Asia Pacific Center for Regenerative Design. And so with that, we're kind of taking a broader notion of when we talk about liabilities, what are some of the external factors, right? So if we're talking about sustainability across the globe, resilience to natural disasters, our use of natural resources, and how those things do or don't get incorporated into our current understandings of the state of the state.
Yeah, and thus the liabilities and thus the economy. So that's February 26th. It's a Thursday. It's at Laniakea. It starts at 12 noon. Come down 11:30 for lunch. Check out our website to sign up, thinktechhawaii.com. Hunter is one of 7 speakers. We'll be trying to talk to some of the others too, let you know what they're going to do. And sign up. We'll see you there. It'll be important. It's one of the most important things we can think of. Aloha.
Aloha.
Hi, my name is Andrew Howard. I'm an astronomer at the Institute for Astronomy at the University of Hawaii up in Manoa. I'd like to tell you about the annual open house that we're having. This year it is on April 6th, 11 to 4 p.m. It's an all ages event, kids, grown-ups, even people in between, everyone is welcome. We have a lot of really fun activities. You get to meet astronomers, look at yourself in an infrared camera, play with Legos, make robots, look at videos. You can even make some of the kids like to make comets out of gravel and snow. Even adults like to do that too. You'll be able to look at the sun with a solar camera safely. It's really a great activity. We do this every year in April, and I hope to see you this year. Thanks.
Aloha, welcome to ThinkTech Hawaii. My name is Josh Green. I'm the host of a program called Healthcare in Hawaii. I'm a physician. I work in the emergency department on the Big Island. I also serve in the state senate, which, please don't hold that against me, doesn't detract from my television program. We speak about all the big healthcare issues in the state. We get together on Tuesdays from 2 o'clock till 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and we try to talk about the most important issues in healthcare. This is a terrific venue for people to learn about healthcare. There are many programs on this station. We broadcast it later, not just on the internet, but also on OC16. Thanks for joining us. Please be informed healthcare consumers.
Well, welcome back to our show today. We're honored to have Fred Rohlfing, Marilyn, Carlsmith, and Lincoln Ishida with us. Fred, I wanted to ask you, how did you balance your fabulous, incredible surfing career with your work as a lawyer?
Oh, it wasn't hard. Just had to figure out which came first. He was always surfing.
Always surfing, yeah.
No, I just did a lot of swimming and master swimming and Waikiki rough water every year. And it was my way of resting, cleaning the mind.
Yes.
For the other things that I was doing in both law and politics during that period.
Well, usually I ask people how has the practice of law changed over the years, but in your case, I'm going to ask you, how do you think surfing has changed since the 50s and 60s?
It's a whole different ball game, I think, looking at what the kids are doing now. We surfed on redwood boards even. It was the beginning of my time back in Honolulu. Didn't have these balsa light boards that they can turn and twist around. So you weren't the same kind of surfer. And later years, we couldn't keep up with the new kids.
Yeah.
And the kids had taken over. And that's as it should be. There's a time and place for everything. So my involvement in the ocean in Hawaii was one of a deep love of the conditions we were in, the climate, the beautiful place to do anything. Oh.
Well, as long as we're talking about the ocean, I'm going to switch from law again for Marilyn. And I know Marilyn is a great diver. And
I'm not sure about great, but I like to dive.
well, an adventurous diver and loves to go to very beautiful places for diving. And so you know, Marilyn, what do you think about the change in Hawaii and the ocean, the marine environment? Can you comment on that?
Oh, Sherry, it seems like I'm always commenting on it because it's so disappointing. When I was small, I speared my first fish when I was 6, a little hinalea, and there were so many fish then, and all kinds of things. The ocean was really full, and now it's really sad. We have decimated the populations in our ocean and continue to do so. And that's got to change. I don't know. I have dived at places where they have reserves and where there are so many fish. I just came back from Raja Ampat, which is the center of the Coral Triangle, where all the speciation for the Indian and Indo-Pacific Oceans originated. And there is so much there. You wouldn't believe it, that it makes it difficult, plus the water's warm. So it makes it difficult to want to run and jump in the ocean here. It's very sad. Felipe Costo, when he was here 3 years ago, said we have 25% of the fish that we had 50 years ago, and he's correct. It's just you never see the apex predators, you never see the big fish that you used to, not in Hawaii's waters anymore. It's very sad.
What if you go to Kona? I mean, isn't that any better?
It's funny, people from Oahu, they come to Kona and they say, oh, choke fish, and I'm looking, what do you mean? There's hardly anything. So perhaps it's slightly better, but it's certainly not noticeably better.
So what does Cousteau say that is the main cause?
Human predation is the main cause, and then we have some pollution and loss of habitat. The spill of the molasses doesn't help. Those kind of things are really difficult. And it's interesting to see. I think it would be great if they made the area that's in front of Waikiki into a permanent marine preserve. It would save people having to drive to Hanauma Bay. It's a dangerous mixed use to have all the different things and have spear fishermen. And after a year of nobody fishing, there's so much fish comes in, and then the day they open it again, no fish. And so it would make really sense to set that aside so we could all go there and see it, and they would spawn fish for the rest of the world.
Well, I know you've moved on from the practice of law and from the judging.
That's correct.
To trying to change the practices and to make a difference on issues relating to climate change and extinction of the resources and even perhaps our own species. So we
one follows the other, you're right.
Yeah, so it's I think a great role model for the rest of us as to what we can aspire to as we get a little older and have hopefully more time to do things that move us and for which we have a passion. So Lincoln, what was it like when you first came back to Hawaii to practice law? And do you think that it's changed? Has the practice of law changed?
No, I don't think the practice of law has changed appreciably. You get an issue, you did research, and I think you have the same priorities today. You know, you get an issue, you've studied that, and there are all kinds of cases, you do all kinds of research, and today you still do the same. True, I have not done that much research of late compared to, say, years ago when I started out as an attorney. Of course, then I had a lot of bosses I had in front of me. So, you know, I did a lot of research. And I think the practice of law puts a little more pressure on the young attorney. You know, I stayed in government for 10 years. And we had some tough cases. I had some really, really tough type cases. But then I always had a paycheck, you know. Yeah. And in private practice, when I first started out, hey, I had to produce, you know, sure, okay, I'm going to charge you $75 an hour or worse to that effect. But basically, you have to produce to collect, you know. If you lose the case, you know, the $75 an hour is really reduced in your mind, and you don't have the heart to charge full value. So I think that's the big pressure for young attorneys, especially with families.
Yeah. So you did a lot of real estate related work in your practice.
Yeah,
is that
actually,
right?
I started with the prosecutor's office, and you know, the prosecutors, you're in court every day. And you know, the advice I get coming back from law school from, I guess, the older guys, starting government. learn at the expense of the public, which I did. And I stayed in government for 10 years, was the prosecutors, the then city attorney's office, and the AG's office. But I did a lot of litigation at that time. And I was asked to come back to the city attorney's office to handle their litigation. The chief then was Norman Chung, who was a brilliant, brilliant guy. And he hired me out of the AG's office to run the litigation for the city. And, you know, we got all kinds. Not tort cases, all the other type cases, semi-political cases. So I did that. And when I left government for private practice, a lot of the young attorneys used to refer cases to me. So, you know, I tried the cases for them, et cetera. But soon, you know, you wait for people to come in the front door. And this was in the boom in the 70s, the real estate boom in Hawaii. And I started getting developers who came in. And I had some pretty big developers who came in, you know, did most of Kailua, for instance, through Joe Powell. And that kept me busy. So my emphasis shifted. And I did a lot of real estate.
So do you think we're having another real estate boom right now?
The type of real estate boom is different from what I read in the papers, and I'm not involved.
Yeah.
All these high rises going up in Kakako, that's not the kind of stuffful thing we were involved in. You know, we handle condominiums, 10 stories, 12 stories. Not what's going on here. And this boom is different with off-island purchases. And it seems to me that the developers are going off-island to make these sales. I'm not sure. I said I'm not involved, but I get that feeling.
But I mean, haven't we always had the issue of off-island people being very interested in coming to Hawaii because, well, it's such a beautiful place, and once the jet airplane came, it wasn't that difficult to get here. So even in the 70s, didn't we have a lot of...
we had some of that. But I think the emphasis then, as compared to today, was that we were trying to build, or the developers were trying to build for the local market, primary. But today, I don't know if that's the case. In fact, I don't believe that's the case. They're looking for a good market.
Yeah.
It's off-seas, off-island rather.
It's all the bottom line.
Yes, I think so.
So Fred, when you first came back and you were practicing law in Honolulu, what was it like then? And what kind of work were you doing when you weren't out there on the surfboard?
I went into a very small firm which specialized mostly in labor law. The firm was the attorneys for the Employers Council, for example, and a number of corporations. And I did quite a bit of work for the pineapple companies under Ray Torkelson and Bud Moore. But after a while, after about 3 or 4 years, I began to hunger for something a little different. So the other member of the firm, partner, was Tom Rice, and he did general practice. So I sort of hung around his back door and talked him into assigning me cases that I could handle in the general practice so I could get myself trained. And one of the cases he gave to me was a construction case, not actually a construction, but it involved a construction site where a young boy drowned in a hole that had been dug and not properly irrigated to get the water out and to give warning of the danger. And I handled the wrongful death and survival statute case on that occasion. And at the time, the insurance companies all were of the mind that the survival statute was finished. You couldn't claim under that. You could go under the wrongful death statute.
I see.
But I went digging around in the library late at night and found a few cases in Pennsylvania that supported our view and argued the case and won it at the Supreme Court. And
So did that make your reputation?
One of the best things about my reputation is being number 400 in the bar was the first case that I won at the Supreme Court, and it was one of the younger people who've been able to do that, I think.
Well, that sounds pretty exciting. So then after that, did you go out on your own?
I went out on my own after 5 years and did a lot of divorce work at that point and claims. So I had a pretty broad practice, not any specific specialty.
I see. And then, Marilyn, how did you end up becoming a judge in family court? How did that come about, and did you enjoy that work? Isn't that family law work difficult and stressful?
Well, when I first got into family law, first I had clerked for Rhoda Lewis in the Supreme Court, and then when I went to Legal Aid Society, I ended up doing almost all family law, divorces and everything else. And so I would appear, finally Sam King set aside a morning calendar and I'd come in and just do divorce after divorce after divorce after
Oh,
divorce.
my.
Yeah. Yep. He was very good about setting things aside. And for having seen how it's practiced, I had 2 children eventually. And do you remember Rebecca, Sam King's secretary? You probably do, you're young enough. And I would put my baby under her desk in a little stroller, and then when the baby cried and needed to be fed, I would come out of court and feed the baby. Judge Corbett let me do that too.
Oh,
so,
my.
And I don't think that would happen in this day and age. Anyway, so that's how I got into family law. When Judge Vitusik went on the bench, I became a partner, or I worked with Pete Vitusik.
Oh, you did?
Yes, and so I did general practice, but all of adoptions. So I did that. And back then, so I was sort of wondering what to do, and they said, well, wouldn't you like to apply to be a judge? I thought, oh, that sounds good. So I applied, and eventually I became a per diem judge. And so that's how that all worked out.
Oh, so did you get a chance to work with Betty Vitusik a lot?
I did. I worked with her when I was making the transition to take her place. But when I first became a per diem judge, I was in district court because I was doing adoptions. So I did a lot of adoptions in family court, but I sat in district court. And then when they finally persuaded me to switch to family court, I had to give up my adoption practice, which I did.
I see.
Because I would get a problem.
So do you think, has the practice of adoption, has that changed a lot, do you think?
Well, I know the fees are way higher, way higher.
Yeah.
So there are some regulations which gradually took hold as we went. There's a statute where if there's an Indian parent, you have to make an American Indian parent, you have to do certain things to make sure the tribe doesn't have a prior claim. So it has changed as the law has. But I'm not sure, you didn't used to even worry about a father if you didn't know who it was. Now there are problems. So the law has changed. I don't think the practice has, except for the fees and some of the laws. Yes.
So is that a great practice to be involved in?
It is. It's a really good practice. You're having a lot of joy for people, because I would do the selection of the parents as well. And so it would be, sometimes it was funny, I took a couple to see their newborn at Kapiolani, and the father looked, he said, oh, he's so advanced, he has his eyes open already. I guess he thought people were like puppies.
Yeah.
But there were also very sad cases, because sometimes the girls would come and stay with me.
Oh, my.
I had room.
Yes.
And they were mostly from the mainland. They were far from home, and they were young, and they were scared, and it was, it was very sad. Many of them would have preferred to keep the child, but it wasn't possible given the times and the economic status of the parents, of the natural parents. So it could be very joyous, but it could be very sad as well. So it was funny, sometimes the girls would come and they just wouldn't go into labor. So my daughters always said, make your meatloaf, because if I served them meatloaf, they would go into labor. So, a lot of funny things like that. But
well, we're going to take another break to hear from our sponsors and hear more about ThinkTech Hawaii.
Hi, aloha. My name is Chris Leatham, and I host a show called The Economy and You. The show plays every Wednesday at noon. And on my show, I bring on guests who are interested or working in the technology space. And so I'd like you to come and watch the show and learn with me about all the sort of exciting things that we're doing in Hawaii to build and grow our economy ecosystem. So I'd like to say aloha, and I look forward to seeing you on the show. Thank you.
Welcome back. We're here today with ThinkTech Hawaii, and we're doing another interview show with some very distinguished attorneys here in Honolulu who have been practicing law since the 1950s and 1960s. So it's a great honor to have with us today Fred Rohlfing, Marilyn Carlsmith, and Lincoln Ishida. So welcome back, everybody. Lincoln, I wanted to ask you a little more about what you thought has changed in terms of the practice of law. I mean, we talked a little bit earlier about real estate in Hawaii and how perhaps that's changed, but just in terms of how the lawyers conduct themselves and behave toward each other. Do you think that part of practicing law in Hawaii has changed?
I think the practice of law in that vein has changed a lot.
Yes.
Way back when, for instance, when I passed the bar, there were maybe 12 people who passed the bar. That's all. Yeah, 12, 10, maybe 15 at the most. That's all you had. And you really knew everybody. And you knew every lawyer in town. And much was done, just by, well, the term is handshake. But,
yes.
You do on the telephone, you talk, and, I talk to you, say, okay, we'll do it. Okay, fine. But I think that has changed over the years. And it has come about, I think, because of the size of the bar. There are so many attorneys that you do not get to meet. We used to have our annual bar party, not convention, a bar party, picnic.
Yeah.
And you gotta see the judges going and they throwing dice and, we're all together, We had a lot of fun. Everybody was one at that time. But that has changed. Completely has changed. So in that way, I think today lawyers have to be on their toes and be careful what you say and what you do. You cannot rely on the word of your adversary.
Well, what do you think about that, Fred? Do you agree with that characterization of how
I would agree with Lincoln. I think it's been a marked change in basically how you trust the other guy. And courts are bigger and seem to be carrying on much more business than they were in our day. So I think that it's lost some of its personal touches, and the Friday afternoon beer session doesn't come off as often. You have to have a formal party. And Brad Coates the other day had, I don't know how many people it is, annual party down at the hotel. What is it called? Restaurant Row. Big party. But the little gatherings after work on Friday usually, my time and Lincoln's early time were quite different than what it is today. And the social milieu of the bar.
Well, Marilyn, you seem to be shaking your head yes, as if you agreed quite a bit. So you do agree that
I agree.
That's really changed a lot. And people aren't as friendly, the lawyers aren't as friendly with each other as they used to be.
Well, and part of it is an inevitable function of the size of the bar. And then things seem so much more competitive, too. It seemed like a slower, less competitive time way back then. I used to work in Hilo in the 50s in my father's law firm as a receptionist or driving stuff around. And of course, Hilo would probably be even less formal than Oahu. But it was very much a handshake and you know everybody, and it was very, very relaxed. And even when I started practicing here in 1966, you did, as both of them had said, you knew everybody. What is the bar now, 4,000? What?
Well, 4,000 active lawyers, there's like 8,000 admitted lawyers.
And you just can't know all of those people or know who you can trust and who you couldn't. Back then, you would know so-and-so was not somebody that you could do the handshake with, and everybody knew it, but you knew that most of the ones you could. So it certainly has changed, but I think it's inevitable.
But do you think it's still a slower, more intimate practice in Hilo the way it was in the old days?
I think it is, because there are so many fewer people, and probably all of the neighbor islands have a more relaxed practice. When I was at Legal Aid, I was assigned to the Kauai jurisdiction, and it was you just knew everybody. Most of the people in the court had been my mother's students when she taught there. It was just really, Hawaii kind. It was really cool, and I don't think that takes place anymore anywhere in Hawaii.
So did you actually live on Kauai as well?
No, they would send me every other week for 2 days.
Oh,
I would see clients and go to court.
That sounds like a great job.
And I did Molokai too, but I would stay in Halipumehana, right across from the courthouse.
Wow.
Walk down. It was really.
So would you go 2 days a month to every other week to Molokai?
Every other week.
To Molokai too?
That was only one day. It wasn't overnight. I didn't need overnight.
Okay.
But it's so changed now.
Yeah.
Well, when my first day when I went to Legal Aid, I was supposed to be learning the ropes and everything, but they were short of somebody, so they brought a prostitute in, and she had to show up in district court. So I got all the information, everything, and we went out, and I realized I didn't know where district court was. Can you imagine how much confidence she had when her attorney says, "Oh, by the way, do you know where the courthouse is?" That was not a very shining moment.
Yeah. Well, Lincoln, what do you think about the founding of the law school here in Hawaii? Do you think that's been a partial contributor to more lawyers in Hawaii and less civility? Or?
Well, I suppose there are pros and cons to the establishment of the law school. One thing is that we have so many attorneys today. I dare say, 70 or so passes the bar every year.
Oh,
but
it's
then,
probably more than that,
maybe
but I'm
more,
not sure.
I'm not sure, but the one good thing is that it has given the opportunity for the local kids to go to law school. It was very expensive way back when to leave Hawaii and, in my case, to Chicago to law school. I remember catching the first flight, the Pan Am flight from Honolulu to San Francisco. That took 10.5 hours, a propeller job.
Yeah.
It was a long one. Mm-hmm. And from there on to Chicago, I forgot how long it was, but I dare say it probably was about 5-6 hours at that time, maybe longer. And once you're there, your mind set, you're not coming back. You better come back with a degree.
Yeah.
You never entertained the thought of, say, coming back for the summer.
Yeah.
Definitely not for the short vacations like Christmas or Thanksgiving. Today, everything is different.
Yeah.
But anyway, the law school is available for the local kids who can do it. And I guess it's doing its job,
So you all have children? Are any of your children in the practice of law? What about you, Fred?
I have one son out of 2 surviving children who is a lawyer. He practices with Dan Case's firm.
So did he ever practice with you?
No, never with me.
Yeah.
I had moved to Maui and pretty much cut off my sources here when he got into the bar. He went to the Chicago University and got a good education there. My other son is a surfer, goes back to the other half of me.
Yeah.
And works in a surf shop at the corner of Hana Highway and Dairy Road.
Oh my.
A very popular spot. A good one for the business he's in. So And my third child was died early.
I'm sorry.
It was a sorry thing. It was a bad thing.
Sorry to hear that.
Yeah. One of the things that I did in the course of practice was to switch over briefly into my earlier labor practice when I went to work for the Nurses Association.
Uh-huh.
I became their lawyer and did the bargaining at the hospitals for the Nurses Association, which was really a fun job.
That sounds very interesting.
Not only were the nurses nice,
Yeah.
but you felt like you had really done something. And they were getting wages that were like $3 an hour. This is in the early, would be early 70s. And the first strike by nurses in Hawaii was when I was the lawyer for them.
Yeah.
And we,
Oh,
You-
you were a lawyer during the strike?
yeah, during the strike,
Mm.
in fact, I walked the picket line. And later on, I was in political situation, and I told people that I was representing the labor side. They couldn't believe that they hired a Republican to do that
Republican
in
House.
those days.
Yeah.
But it came in very handy when I went to a labor
Uh-huh.
family and wanted their vote.
Okay, yeah. So we're going to take a short break again to hear from our sponsors. Thank you.
Quick drink water.
Hi, I'm your host on ThinkTech Asia, Bill Sharp. I look forward to you joining us each Monday between 4 and 5 o'clock when we film right here in our studio in downtown Honolulu. The show, ThinkTech Asia, focuses on contemporary events in Asia. And by Asia, we mean anything from Hawaii, south to Australia and New Zealand, west to Pakistan, and as far north as the Russian Far East. Clearly, this is one of the most economically dynamic centers of the world, and we bring you up to date on what's going on in a whole host of countries in this very vital region. We look forward to seeing you. Aloha.
Welcome back. We're here today with Hawaii's legal giants, Fred Rohlfing, Marilyn Carlsmith, and Lincoln Ishida. And we're very fortunate to have a chance to hear about their backgrounds and the history of practicing law in Hawaii. So I wanted to follow up on my question on your children. So are any of your children, Marilyn, or any of them involved in the practice of law? And will that make the third generation of Carlsmiths?
If they're not.
They're not,
No.
okay.
But I was the third generation.
You were the third generation?
Yes, my
Oh,
grandfather,
great.
my father, and I.
Oh, wow.
But my daughters both, you know how what you do after you graduate, they're sort of our fads. When I graduated, it was medicine and law.
I see.
And they just graduated and being a consultant and getting an MBA is the big thing.
I see.
So both of them got MBAs and became consultants. People do ask, are you disappointed that they're not lawyers? And I say not at all. It seems that it's become more of a business than a profession,
Yeah.
is how I would characterize in big terms the
Yeah.
change in law.
So what kind of consulting do they do? Do they consult on climate change issues, environment, and
No,
stuff
they
like
all
that?
they
Like
want. I think it's all very lucrative. Meg,
Yeah.
one works with Accenture, and what they do is go into businesses and try and improve the bottom line, doing things
Yeah.
like that. And my other daughter worked for Bain of Boston for a long time, but didn't have enough time for her children. So now she's the business person for a small cake startup in California. And so my 3-year-old granddaughter always wants red devil cake.
Oh, no, nice.
Yes, so
Very nice.
she's working for that and is really enjoying it.
And how about you, Lincoln? What are your children
Yeah, I have 2 sons who are attorneys. The older boy went to Pepperdine in Malibu, and he is in partnership with a person, and he rents offices from me. There is no legal connection between he and myself, but he rents offices
Here in Hawaii?
Yes, my present office. My younger son went to my school. He attended Northwestern. And he's in private practice in a firm. I think it was Tom and Petrus, I think, downtown. Does construction litigation. So I have two sons who are attorneys, and I'm relieved that they're doing okay, and they're not asking me for support.
Yeah.
I have another son, but he decided, no, two brothers are enough, and he's an architect.
I
So
see.
they're doing fine. The kids are doing fine.
So what will you do with your practice when you retire?
I really don't know. I tell you, one of the problems is that my office is a condominium. I bought that condominium in 1971, 72.
Where is that?
It's what's commonly called the HGEA building.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're in the penthouse. We own half the penthouse. So I have that. And the market for offices, condominium offices, not the best in town. So, but then we were successful in buying the fee from the Bishop Estate. So now my feeling is that we'll just hold on.
Yeah.
And if I go, then the kids can do something with it in time. So I'm just waiting my time and do that.
I see. So what do you think the future is for the practice of law in Hawaii? What do you think, Fred? What's the future for our young people who are just starting out?
I think law practice, being a lawyer isn't just being in law practice. Being a lawyer is something that you apply to things you do throughout your life. It's how you approach probably your problems at home, that you do any kind of business. You apply the principles that you learned as a lawyer, and it teaches you. It's a discipline that I think comes back in case you ignore it. Don't work hard. It catches up with you. And we've had lots of people who are lawyers who, for example, drink too much because they're worrying about their cases and under pressure. And I think that's changed. It's more civilized practice now. You don't have the extremes. But you still have problems that can come up that way.
Well, I think we're going to, unfortunately, have to draw this fascinating, interesting session to a close. And I just want to thank each and every one of you, Fred, Marilyn, and Lincoln, for sharing your knowledge and experience with us. And I think it's been a very interesting show, and we greatly appreciate your contribution.
Thank you,
So
Sherry.
thank you, everybody, and thank you for joining us today. It was a great show, and I'm sure you'll agree with me that our guests were superb. Aloha. Not Betty.
No.
Not Betty.
We have been.